I'm David Muir. Tonight on World News from Tucson, after the tragedy, the first test in Washington now. Arizona Senator John McCain praising his one-time opponent, President Obama, on his push for greater civility. But will it last? Climbing back, the Congresswoman and her remarkable recovery. What doctors have done here this weekend and why this next week is so crucial. The town hall, after that meeting outside the Safeway was cut short 1 week ago, the survivors and the heroes who saved them determined to continue that conversation all together for the first time. And here in Tucson, Christina's gift to the friends she left behind. The boy in the stands, the girl on the field. Tonight, their simple message for our country.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News.
And good evening from Tucson, where tonight a community so tested, having endured such pain, is clearly trying to move forward, to move past this. And tonight, good news about the Congresswoman. Her condition has just been upgraded from critical to serious now that she's off the ventilator. And here in Arizona, Senator John McCain with praise for his former rival, President Obama, after his call for more civility in our national conversation. But that will be tested this week and quickly. And so we start tonight with David Curley in Washington. David, good evening.
Good evening, David. It is the talk of the town here. Will Republicans and Democrats actually change the tone of their talking?
The First family went to church this morning, where there were prayers for those in Tucson and praise for the president's leadership, including his speech calling for civility, which both sides heard.
I think that we Republicans and I think Democrats alike will realize that if we tone down the rhetoric, sometimes our debate is more effective from our own side.
At the State of the Union, rather than Republicans and Democrats sitting apart, there is a call for the two sides to mingle. Democrat Chuck Schumer and Republican Tom Coburn say they will sit together.
Now that's symbolic, but maybe it just sets a tone and everything gets a little bit more civil.
Some of the problems in our country is we talk past each other, not to each other.
John McCain went even further in an opinion piece in the Washington Post this morning, praising the president. Quote, "I believe he is a patriot."
The experts point to the time after 9/11. There was an effort to turn down the rhetoric then. It did not last long. Politics by their nature are contentious. We'll see if its practitioners can maintain civility. David?
David Curley starting us off in Washington tonight. David, thank you. And back here in Tucson, it was the meeting they never had, cut short 1 week ago at that Safeway. The survivors and the people who saved them determined to return to continue that conversation, all in the same room for the first time. I joined Christiane Amanpour this morning for a special This Week town hall. And Christiane began by asking how many in that room were there or knew someone hurt in the shootings.
Show me by a show of hands. So practically the whole room, this whole community has been so touched.
There were so many in the room who asked, why isn't there more to help detect signs of mental illness long before tragedy? The town hall here in Tucson. And one more note about that arrest that followed the town hall we've been reporting on here. James Eric Fuller, who was shot twice outside the Safeway, he was arrested after authorities say he took a photo of a local Tea Party official in the audience telling him, "You're dead." Tonight, officials say he has been involuntarily committed to receive a psychiatric exam. Meanwhile, that Tea Party official says this wasn't the only threat he's received. And so I want to bring in our senior Washington editor, Rick Klein, tonight. And Rick, as you know, I was inside that town hall, and I've got to tell you, people from all political affiliations had come together for the most part. It wasn't until the very end after the town hall that we saw that flare-up. So as we look ahead to Washington this week, how will politicians stick to policy, keep the fight going, and yet change tone as they say they will?
That's exactly it, David. The words will change, but the deeds will be exactly the same. But that will test this truce that seems to have come over Washington, to say the least. There's so many high passions. And then you follow that up with next week at the State of the Union address. It's going to be an extraordinary scene. Already there's a critical mass of lawmakers who say they'll sit with a colleague of the opposite party. That will send a powerful signal that while there are deep disagreements between the parties, that doesn't mean you have to be disagreeable about it.
All right, Rick Klein keeping watch there at the White House tonight. Rick, thanks so much. And as we reported at the top of the broadcast about that delicate surgery over the weekend here, doctors carefully removing Congresswoman Giffords' breathing tube. This will be a crucial week in her recovery. Then later here from Tucson, Christina Taylor Greene, the lone girl on the boys' Little League team. Tonight, the giant words from the stands in the field from some very tiny Americans.
This is ABC World News.
We learned this weekend that the little girl lost in the shooting, Christina Taylor Green, that her donated organs have helped save the life of a young girl in Boston. And today here, a remarkable sight, children playing ball in Christina's memory. At the far corner of these Tucson ball fields, a handful of balloons. Christina Taylor Green loved playing ball. She was the lone girl on a team full of boys. This was a tough week here in Tucson.
Yeah.
Travis was in the stands. What's your hope going forward?
Well, I don't want anybody to be scared to go to that
Safeway?
Safeway again.
What do you want to remember most about her?
That she didn't deserve to die.
Did you know that she played on a whole team of boys? She was the only girl?
No.
That's pretty brave.
Yeah.
In fact, this whole community has shown its bravery. In the dugout, 10-year-old Jessie Rapp with her eyes on the game, her thoughts this week elsewhere. Did you think a lot about Christina this week?
I did. It was really sad.
And moving forward, what do you hope people will think about Tucson?
I hope they'll think it's going to be a lot better now.
Safer?
Yeah.
And happier?
Yes.
And that's what Travis told us, hoping the country won't forget the beauty here. Do you think it's a good place?
Yeah. It's a nice desert.
It's a nice desert.
Yeah.
And then he quite simply told me this.
It's time to move on.
Time to move on.
Yeah.
The message tonight from the children here in Tucson. And that is the broadcast for this evening. I'm David Muir. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please be seated. To the families of those we've lost, to all who call them friends, to the students of this university, the public servants who are gathered here, the people of Tucson, and the people of Arizona. I have come here tonight as an American who, like all Americans, kneels to pray with you today and will stand by you tomorrow. There is nothing I can say that will fill the sudden hole torn in your hearts. But know this: the hopes of a nation are here tonight. We mourn with you for the fallen. We join you in your grief. And we add our faith to yours that Representative Gabrielle Giffords and the other living victims of this tragedy will pull through. Scripture tells us there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. And the 6 people who lost their lives on Saturday, they too represented what is best in us. You see, when a tragedy like this strikes, it is part of our nature to demand explanations, to try to impose some order on the chaos and make sense out of that which seems senseless. Already, we've seen a national conversation commence, and much of this process of debating what might be done to prevent such tragedies in the future is an essential ingredient in our exercise of self-government. But at a time when our discourse has become so sharply polarized, at a time when we are far too eager to lay the blame for all that ails the world at the feet of those who happen to think differently than we do, It's important for us to pause for a moment and make sure that we're talking with each other in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds. Scripture tells us that there is evil in the world, and that terrible things happen for reasons that defy human understanding. In the words of Job, when I looked for light, then came darkness. Bad things happen, and we have to guard against simple explanations in the aftermath. Yes, we have to examine all the facts behind this tragedy. We cannot and will not be passive in the face of such violence. We should be willing to challenge old assumptions in order to lessen the prospects of such violence in the future. But what we cannot do is use this tragedy as one more occasion to turn on each other. That we cannot do. That we cannot do. As we discuss these issues, let each of us do so with a good dose of humility. Rather than pointing fingers or assigning blame, let's use this occasion to expand our moral imaginations, to listen to each other more carefully, to sharpen our instincts for empathy, and remind ourselves of all the ways that our hopes and dreams are bound together. After all, that's what most of us do when we lose somebody in our family, especially if the loss is unexpected. We're shaken out of our routines. We're forced to look inward. We reflect on the past. So some loss causes us to look backward, but it also forces us to look forward, to reflect on the present and the future, on the manner in which we live our lives, and nurture our relationships with those who are still with us. We may ask ourselves if we've shown enough kindness and generosity and compassion to the people in our lives, whether our priorities are in order. We recognize our own mortality, and we are reminded that in the fleeting time we have on this earth, what matters is not wealth or status or power or fame, but rather how well we have loved and what small part we have played in making the lives of other people better. For those who were harmed, those who were killed, they are part of our family, an American family, 300 million strong. We may not have known them personally, but surely we see ourselves in them. If this tragedy prompts reflection and debate, as it should, let's make sure it's worthy of those we have lost. Let's make sure it's not on the usual plane of politics and point scoring and pettiness that drifts away in the next news cycle. The loss of these wonderful people should make every one of us strive to be better. To be better in our private lives, to be better friends and neighbors and co-workers and parents. And if, as has been discussed in recent days, their death helps usher in more civility in our public discourse, let us remember it is not because a simple lack of civility caused this tragedy. It did not. But rather because only a more civil and honest public discourse can help us face up to the challenges of our nation in a way that would make them proud. We should be civil because we want to live up to the example of public servants like John Rowe and Gabby Giffords, who knew first and foremost that we are all Americans and that we can question each other's ideas without questioning each other's love of country, and that our task, working together, is to constantly widen the circle of our concern so that we bequeath the American dream to future generations. They believed, and I believe that we can be better. Those who died here, those who saved lives here, they help me believe. We may not be able to stop all evil in the world, but I know that how we treat one another, that's entirely up to us. And I believe that for all our imperfections, we are full of decency and goodness, and that the forces that divide us are not as strong as those that unite us. All of us, we should do everything we can do to make sure this country lives up to our children's expectations. As has already been mentioned, Christina was given to us on September 11th, 2001. One of 50 babies born that day to be pictured in a book called Faces of Hope. On either side of her photo in that book were simple wishes for a child's life. I hope you help those in need, read one. I hope you know all the words to the national anthem and sing it with your hand over your heart. I hope you jump in rain puddles. And here on this earth, we place our hands over our hearts, and we commit ourselves as Americans to forging a country that is forever worthy of her gentle, happy spirit. May God bless and keep those we've lost in restful and eternal peace. May He love and watch over the survivors. And may He bless the United States of America.